This is the Wise Guy Radio Show, a podcast dedicated to educating and inspiring through conversations with today's top talents in the world of glass. We will be dissecting their journeys in hopes to deliver actionable content that you, the artist, can start implementing now, helping you grow not only as a creative spirit, but also a successful artistic entrepreneur. With a little organization, relationship building, and your artistic ability, you can obtain greatness. Climb aboard. Whether an artist, retail owner, or enthusiast, we have a ton of fun in store for you. Welcome to the Wise Guy Radio Show. This episode of the Wise Guy Radio Show is brought to you by Mountain Glass Arts. For the month of September 2016, Mountain Glass is offering borosilicate sale, North Star odds and seconds, 30% off. All you have to do is put in the code NSOS in the checkout. And for all you soft glass nerds, Soft Glass COE 104 sale, 30% off. Creations is messy. Just put in the code MESSY, MESSY at checkout. And for any other questions or concerns, go to mountainglass.com. That's mountainglass.com. This episode of the Wise Guy Radio Show is brought to you by American Helix. The American Helix is a revolutionary new concept in smoking technology. Designed and manufactured by American Glassblowers, this pipe is light years ahead of its time. Based on Bernoulli's principle, the shape of the pipe, along with an innovative intake system, creates a Venturi effect through precision micro-holes in the chamber, which results in a slower burn that conserves tobacco and gives a smooth, refreshing experience, making the American Helix the smoothest hitting pipe on the market. For further info or to locate their products, you can find them online at AmericanHelix.com. That's AmericanHelix.com. Hey, what's happening? Welcome to the Wise Guy Radio Show, episode number 128. This is Jay Michael, your host. Thank you so much for tuning in today. With 17 years of experience behind the torch, I am as excited as always to bring you conversations with artists, sharing their stories in hopes to inspire and entertain while helping you grow your business. And today is no exception. Today's guest is featuring Dustin Revere, Revere Glass, and everywhere on the web. If you don't know who Dustin Revere is, you will after today. You can go on Google and just put in Revere Glass as well and find thousands upon thousands of pictures and articles and newsletters and YouTube videos and all kind of fun stuff. He is a man of educating, sharing the knowledge, and also a glass artist in his own rights. And his background is extensive from all the classes and lessons and journeys he's had throughout this past almost 20 years of his career. And I guess really, a little bit over 20 years. He started back in 1995, his first introduction, and has gone from there. And has taught thousands of students, whether through his classes in his studio or through the internet. Has been instrumental in inspiring the guys over at Torch Talk to get their video channel going, as well as their Facebook page group that has grown to over 6,000 members. It's just amazing the influence that Dustin has had on our industry, and I kind of joke about it in the show with him and talk about how before I myself personally got started, really when I got started back in '99, there was really no internet. There was no YouTube. None of that kind of stuff was going on at that time. I mean, it was there, but it wasn't like it is now. And I always joke that this somewhat middle generation over the last 5 to 10 years of artists a lot of them were trained through the YouTube and channels and getting their start from Dustin Revere and have then gone on to take classes and fine-tune their work. And if you're one of them, it's definitely you'll enjoy this as you get to listen to Dustin's background and some fun chats we get into. So definitely enjoy that. Also want to make sure to thank our sponsors. Our newest one on the board we have is Glassroots Trade Show out there up in Madison, and if you're going to be going to the trade show this year, I'm still working on going. I have my big meeting today with my work to find out what my schedule is going to be looking like over basically the rest of the year as we fine-tune this stuff I'm doing at work. So I've already asked it for the time off, but it may have to work out to where I have to sacrifice it this year and not go, only to focus on some things going on behind the scenes at my job, including some new apprenticeship I'll be starting here soon myself, which I'm pretty stoked about. And I guess at that point, it's really never too late to learn. It's one of the things that I find the beauty with a glass artist and being a glass blower and what have you is the daily challenges and the constant learning that we have. No matter how many times we've done something over and over and over again, there's always ways to do it a little bit better and to fine-tune it and looking forward to taking this apprenticeship on with artist Joe Brubaker, I work with at the Rebus Brothers. So I'm pretty stoked about that. And I'll be putting up some pictures and stuff as things happen of some of the new items I'll be creating, the character work I'll be doing, and what have you. So stay tuned for that. And other than that, I'm going to rock and roll because I have to get my ass ready for work and get on the road. So I hope you enjoy this interview with Dustin. Again, it's a lot of fun. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or just want to say hey or have a question or whatever you want to do, hit me up, info@wiseguyradio.com. That's info@wyzguyradio.com. And also go to mountainglass.com. Check out their sales they have on a weekly basis. Always have some fun get it quick sale. They just had a buy 2 get 1 free shot case, tubing and bras and whatever else they had out there. And so definitely stay tuned up with them and everybody else. And just thank you for tuning in. And I look forward to talking to you on episode 129, where we're going to be finalizing and wrapping up our discussion on how to sell your work as we get into the holiday season and start to talk about selling our work even more so and fine-tuning it for the holidays. Alrighty. I love you. Thanks for tuning in. Have a beautiful day. Beautiful day, Melton. Happy week. Productive week. Other than that, we'll talk to you next time. Take care. Peace. Hey, what's up, Dustin? Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Jason. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, brother, man, it's good to have you on. We've been playing phone tag and scheduling conflicts and what have you, so it's an honor to have you on the show. And I've been wanting to get you on here, man, because for me, as an inspiration to our industry, yourself and then Slinger doing Degenerate Art has really spawned a whole new generation of glassblowers out there. I mean, by the thousands. I mean, literally.
Yeah, and tens of thousands.
Yeah, it's insane, and just a whole generation of like Dustin Revere students in a sense that learn through YouTube and what have you. And so I definitely am honored to have you on the show and excited to chit chat with you. And before we get a little sidetracked here, if you want to start off by telling us how you were introduced to the torch, and then we'll go from there.
Well, I started blowing glass in 1995, and I just graduated high school. I've been doing a lot of art before that, and specifically pottery, and I knew I wanted to try it. There was no information available besides Homer Hoyt's book, which I don't even know if it's people know about it these days, but it was like a scientific kind of making art with scientific style glass that Glasscraft had put out, and so I bought that book, and I started looking around for different pieces of equipment. So I would go to a welding shop and buy a regulator, and then I'd find that little hand torch and found a kiln, and because I'd been doing pottery before, so I'd built a kiln already, and I was was familiar about that. But I gathered all my supplies from different sources, and it took me a little while, but yeah, I started pretty rough on like my parents' deck on their house, and just tried to figure it out without any instruction. There was no books, there was no YouTube, there was no people to call. I mean, at that time in the United States, my guess is there was probably about 10 or maybe 20 pipe makers in the country. And so it was very secret and not an easy thing to try to figure out technically too.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, it's kind of funny because everybody's like asking me how long I've been doing this for, and I started myself in '99, and I always say it was before YouTube, and then I also bring up it was before Dustin Revere. so
yeah.
So
I felt that there needed to be like an index of techniques, because just like you and I and a lot of other old schoolers kind of know, is that like doing it by yourself and trying to learn from your mistakes. It's a great experience, but it's time consuming and can be frustrating for people who don't have time and money to invest and fail so much to figure out how to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, dude, can you give me 1 second? I'm getting a weird. I don't know. I've reset my studio up for recording. I'm getting the weirdest freaking buzz noise. I don't know what the fuck it is. It's driving me nuts. Can you hear it on your end?
No.
Okay. I don't know if I've just got equipment too close together and they're just giving each other weird feedback. Trying to like keep all my shit together so I don't have to keep setting things up. I usually record in my house.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, I'm good now. It went away.
Cool.
So, but yeah, man, yeah, it's interesting because, like, you know, even some of the guys that have been around for years and years and, like, you know, as long as us, that actually had an opportunity to learn from somebody or work alongside somebody else. You know, did you start off like like you're saying, you start off in your studio more or less on your own, you know, kind of just figuring this stuff out? Was there a point in time that you then went on to work with other artists?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I at the time I was about to start going to college in Oakland at the California College of Arts and Crafts to focus on glassblowing. And so that's a furnace, you know, classical furnace stuff. And so at the time I was, when I started lamp working, I started furnace at the same time. And I really thought that I wanted to be like a classic furnace worker, you know, Venetian style. And I did a lot of classes and worked with some of those guys, but I very soon, like within a few years of me starting, 2 or 3 years, I started to get a lot of opportunities to study with lamp workers. And so it redirected, you know, what I was doing because I was just getting so many opportunities to study with lamp workers. So about 2 years, maybe 2 or 3 years into it, I went to a school in North Carolina for the summer called Penland School for Crafts. And it's a specific craft school that has a lot of mediums besides glass. And I went there and I got a scholarship for one session, and it was 2 weeks. And then they have an auction during the session. And so I was actually able to sell enough work in the auction each session to continue all summer. And there I was able to meet Gianni Toso. And he is a master furnace worker and master lamp worker. And he's from Murano. And he has over 700 years of uninterrupted lineage in glassblowing.
Wow.
So I said, hey, I want to, you know, apprentice with you for furnace, because I was really focused on the furnace and just making pipes and stuff for to kind of help support everything. And also because I was using cannabis for epilepsy, so I really connected with it. But he's like, no, I don't have apprentices. I don't take on apprentices, especially Americans. And I basically like just tagged around him the whole 2 weeks. And at the end, he's like, fine, you can come apprentice with me. And I need help building my furnace because I only have a lamp working studio at home. So I was like, oh, great. I'll move to your area and I'll do whatever you want. And, you know, as a kid, I always was like fascinated by like the Karate Kid kind of style of learning, like paint my fence and that'll teach you to be a black belt.
Yeah.
And like, I always thought that was really cool. But then when I was like put in that situation, it's a little difficult because like I wanted to be a master glass blower, and he's like basically like, help me build a vineyard, help me, you know, move this cement. And I was like, all right. So I did that, and I worked with him for about a year, but we never got the furnace built, and I just basically helped him with lamp working.
Huh.
And so all soft glass. And so I would work during the day in his soft glass studio, and I was able to set up my own Boro studio at one of his neighbors' houses in their garage. And then I just would work at night and on the weekends making pipes, and then during the days I would help him with his soft glass stuff. And so after Gianni Toso, that was about a year, I went back to Penland, and I was able to meet Cesare Tofolo, and
Nice.
I basically begged him for the same thing. He's like, you know, and you can work with me. And I was like, awesome, because at that point I was a little more focused on um, lamp working, and especially like the Venetian style and the epitome of technique, which, Cesare, in my mind and many others, is the best classical shaper in in all of lamp working. So I was like, all right. So I was able to go to Italy and Murano and work with him. And when I was in Italy, I got to meet Davide Salvador and Lucio Bubacco, and work with those kind of guys and have some custom tools made from Dino Tedeschi. And this was like in about 1998, 1999, when the first time I went to Murano, and came back, and then went to a school in Tennessee called the Appalachian Center for Crafts, which was another sort of crafts focused school. And I would blow furnace glass and then have my own little studio set up for pipe making. And from there, I would get opportunities to work with people like Roger Paramore and Paul Stankard, and a lot of American greats. I worked a little bit with Emilio Santini, Robert Mickelson back in the day. So I got to get a really big variety of classical masters. There was no master pipe makers like we have today. So basically, I had to adapt the techniques that I was learning to make the pipes.
Yeah, man, that's incredible, bro. Holy fuck. First 4 years into it, and you have like this bucket list already checked off of all these masters. It's amazing. 'Cause, like, I know growing up and seeing like Glassline and the Flow magazine and some different, even just art magazines, and seeing all these names you just mentioned. And early on in my career, just kind of figuring this shit out. Those were the artists I looked up to and was just blown away. It's like, man, I aspire to be them one day, or that type of art, or that skill level in a sense, So
Yeah, I was definitely going after it, and I would do anything I could to work with these guys. I would clean up whatever they wanted. I would be able to pay a little bit. I would from the pipes that I was making, pay them if they needed some money or whatever. I would do anything. I was after it. I was not focused on anything else, and so I was really after it. And there's some more guys too. I was just going from one place to the next, trying to learn all the different techniques and styles of glass blowing and lamp working.
yeah, then you're kind of able to take all that and then culminate it into what your style is now.
Yeah, exactly. The way to get the most information is to try to be around the most people that are better than you, and take any pieces you can from each person, and see how to put that together for yourself. And now I have my own style of blowing glass, which is definitely the foundation is with all these guys, but I don't work like any one of them individually. Like, I don't work like Cesare or Gianni or Paramore or Emilio. I work in a combination, and that's what the American pipe making style is. It's really a combination of those different styles, and it's not one particular style.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's definitely a fusion of so much stuff. And that's what I think is so much fun with the pipe making, besides the technical side of the traditional lamp working, is all the science that's involved, going into the scientific glass blowing stuff, and just having to understand what we're working with. Because all those masters, those guys that you worked with, a lot of those guys all did solid work. Some of them did hollow work as well, but a lot of it was solid sculpture. So did you find like the transition from working lamp work, sculptural, solid stuff with soft glass going into the Boro, like did it teach you more because of the amount of patience you have to have when you're working with like Moretti or some kind of soft glass like that?
Yeah, I mean, they're different. They work differently, as a lot of soft glass will stay hot longer and it reacts differently with the flame. Yeah, I mean, it taught me about how glass moves and what the different chemistries of glass are that move, but ultimately glass is glass, and just because one moves slower than the other or is more resistant to thermal shock, uh, it's still glass. I've worked with soft glass from different coefficients, even up to at one point in the furnace, we were just putting in broken like bottles, for like wine bottles and stuff. And that particular chemistry of glass is very short. So it's made to put into a mold and freeze into shape. So you don't have a lot of time to work. Whereas some of the soft glass with a very high coefficient of expansion stays long for a long time. And it's so hot, it could just drip on the floor. And borosilicate is kind of in between. So it just taught me to pay attention to how the glass is moving and how I need to adapt to the way that that particular chemistry of glass works. But ultimately, when the common denominator is glass, it melts. It's going to move. It's an amorphous solid, and just because one has boron and one has soda ash as a flux, it's still the basic chemistry.
Yeah, exactly. It's all honey when it comes down to it.
Yeah.
Because I know, like, my first introduction recently, like working over at Disney, everything we do mostly, I shouldn't say everything, but most everything we do is boro. We have a couple of bead makers there, and I had a chance to work at one of the studios doing beadwork, and it was my first introduction into it. And I always say I just made a mess, really, trying to find the right flame properties to make this stuff not pop and spit everywhere, and then also trying to find the right flame setting to get the right color, because soft like that, the soft glass, it's really easy to reduce it down. Even though boro is too, but the soft glass is way more sensitive, if I found. And it's like you're saying, glass is glass. I just had to sit back and go back to my foundation. And that's why I always preach to take a class, no matter what it is. If it's furnace work, soft glass, whatever it is, go ahead and take a class from somebody, because you're going to learn something, especially hand techniques. And I think the hot shop is a good place to start for classes, because you really get a lot of hand technique, especially when it comes to using tools.
Yeah, what I say a lot in the videos is, when you're learning from somebody, it's important to watch their hands sometimes more than what's happening with the glass, because the hands are creating what's happening with the glass.
Yep, exactly. I say the same thing, brother. Hell yeah. Yeah, because I know, like, I've only taken 2 actual classes ever, and the 2 that I took, I was really wanting to go just to see these guys, how they set up, like how their tools were put out, the height of their bench, their torch, the whole 9 yards. And then also watching their hands, because, like, it's one of our secrets for what we do. You got to have some kind of vision and artistic creation mindset, but really a lot of it's technique and a lot of it's hand technique. And I think, a lot of people say, like, a chef could probably transition into flame working because of their hand techniques and having knife skills, and having that kind of, it's obviously a different ball of wax, but the idea is still
I would
there.
agree that it's similar. I mean, I love to cook, and I've had some cooking jobs too, and I definitely think it's similar. You got heat, you got timing, and it is similar to blowing glass and using your hands for particular execution of something that you're trying to do.
Yeah. All the while you have all this pressure and intensity, and then also focus, which turns into meditation over the period of time, which one of my favorite things about it, dealing with shit, on the torch.
Yeah. So at my school in Berkeley, about the meditation, for a while I was teaching a lot of classes, and I realized that after people were done blowing glass, they were very blissful. And for years I tried to figure out what it was about glass that makes people happy when they're doing it. And what I've come to, after having probably more than 10,000 people come through my brick and mortar building after all the Groupon classes and pipe making classes that we were teaching for a long time, is that it's a meditation, because people are able to not focus on any of the pain or what's happening tomorrow or what happened yesterday, because especially initially when you're blowing glass, it takes 100% of your focus, which is a meditation, and that's why people end up feeling very blissful after they've blown glass. And I think that's also one of the reasons that Um, glass blowing attracts people who have had trauma in their life because it's a way to meditate through that. And I think a lot of people who I've worked with and met have had some significant um, traumas that they've had to, grapple with. And glass blowing is a meditation, and it helps people be in the moment and realize that that's where everything exists.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. Absolutely. Yeah, it's an amazing thing, and two, it's like it teaches you the whole concept and idea of center and being on center, whether it's your glass or your life. And if you're off balance just a little bit, nothing goes right. you know,
Yeah.
it's very
Well,
interesting.
it's an interesting thing because um, when you're working like from the Italian perspective of blowing glass, center is a fluid state. So the glass often is off center the whole time you're working, and just when you're done with the particular thing, you freeze that into center state. Whereas from a scientific perspective, the glass remains center the whole time. It's really about the fluidity of glass and the center.
I kind of want to step back too with your health. You're talking about being epileptic,
Mhm.
and and using cannabis as a medicine. My father-in-law from Vietnam was exposed to Agent Orange, and a lot of the stuff they're finding right now is that a lot of these guys that were veterans are dealing with heart and brain issues because of the exposure. And epilepsy is one of the things he's been dealing with for the past 5 years.
Mhm.
It's not major. It's a minor thing, but just often enough, it catches him off guard.
Yeah.
And I've been wanting to introduce him to CBDs or cannabis in a sense of some sort. He's like
Mhm.
not very conservative, but he kind of is in some ways. So
Mhm.
I find it interesting that you're open completely. I mean, I see all your videos. Every video starts off with you guys talking about some kind of medication of some sort. Um,
Yeah.
have you found issues through the process of being a glass artist dealing with epilepsy at all?
Well, like I was talking earlier with the trauma, I mean, that was one of my big traumas that I had to grapple with, especially being a kid and having this kind of severe medical condition. And, um, it definitely was difficult for me socially as a kid growing up. And so through glass, I was able to meditate and find my center dealing with that. I found really early on that cannabis was helping with the seizures, and I don't take any other medication now besides CBD, which is the non-psychoactive, a non-psychoactive part of cannabis. So um, that's really an amazing miracle medicine, and for people who, like you're saying, are more conservative. Um, I mean, they can be conservative is fine, but I think being closed-minded is a little bit more difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
But you have to present facts. You have to say, there's more people that die of prescription drug overdoses than all other illicit, so-called illicit drugs combined. Cannabis. THC is a psychoactive portion of cannabis, and it will make you feel euphoric and high. But CBD will make you feel relaxed and is non-psychoactive. I mean, there's a lot of research, with the Epilepsy Foundation and other qualified scientific studies that show a lot of very promising results, much more than any other prescription medicine. And so you have to present the facts. You have to say, listen, if you're actually concerned, then do the research. If you just want to take prescription drugs, from the biggest drug dealers in the world, do that. But that's for somebody who's not open to change or growth, and then they can do that. But when something presents itself that's a miracle drug, that you can produce at home for free, as opposed to buying drugs from these big drug dealers. Um, there's a whole, I mean, in our society, there's a whole system set up for people to get prescription drugs super easy because these companies know that natural remedies exist and that they're easy to get and that they're easy to produce, and financially that scares them. and so there's a lot of propaganda towards that, and it's a system set up to avoid people discovering the benefits of cannabis, and that's one of the reasons that has been a Schedule 1 drug, is because it limits the research that it can be funded from the government and from other agencies, because a Schedule 1 drug has no medical benefits, which is not the case for cannabis, but the research is lacking because there's very little funding up until recently that would expose the benefits of cannabis, and specifically CBD, which is a miracle drug for not only epilepsy but MS and Tourette's and all kinds of cancer. And so it's if I was a big drug company dealing drugs all over the world, making profits and flying around in my private jet, I'd be nervous too about something that somebody could produce at home for free and then stop, spending thousands of dollars a year on the drugs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree, bro. Yeah, well said. Thank you for that. Because I agree with current research and stuff. I mean, even being myself in Florida and our conservative state and the fucked up laws we have, they finally allows medical patients that have severe epilepsy and different disorders and cancer and what have you to have access to this stuff. And we have a dispensary just opened up down the street from my house finally, which is pretty badass and exciting to see. So I'm definitely glad you're bringing this up. So that's why I wanted to talk about it, because I think part of our industry is, as artists, we're also we're all about being advocates for positive change in the world. And the fact that we do what we do is for a living that has this thumb on us all the time with federal regulations and other things that we care about it, but we don't let it stop us, in a sense. And I think persevering as a glass artist makes you successful, but it also makes you a successful human being in life, And then
and that's one of the reasons why I chose to say really early on in my videos that I have epilepsy and I was using cannabis, is because I'm aware that everyone has something to deal with in their life and a challenge to deal with in their life. And I want people to know that I've also had challenges to deal with, but you can overcome that, and you can still be a glass blower, and you can still do what you love. But everybody has challenges, and everybody has something to deal with, and that's my particular thing. But I've had a lot of people write me and say, I have PTSD or I have some sort of trauma, and glass blowing has helped so much. But I didn't want people to think that it's my life is super easy and it was all given to me, and there was no challenges. So it was really important for me to state that in my videos, so that people could relate to it and understand that people have a challenge to deal with.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I'm glad you do that. I heard another podcaster the other day who's actually has a pretty successful podcast, and he was talking about how, like, people early on in business, how they compare themselves early on in their business to someone who's been in business for 20 years who's highly successful, and they compare themselves where each individual person is at that moment instead of comparing themselves to where that person was when they started. None of us were any good when we started. I mean, look at you now. You've got like several hundred YouTube videos. You have your own company. You have this whole new line of glass coming out that's came out last year, last year. That came out last year or 2 years ago now.
The droplets and stuff.
Yeah, was that 2 years?
About 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah.
So it's growth. It takes time. I don't know if it's embarrassing or not, but I would say I'm a big fan of Vince McMahon and the WWE, because I appreciate character development and storyline, and how long it takes someone to go from the bottom rings of early on in their 20s to go through all the beatings and the training and learning technique to where they can get to a platform to then they can excel and get paid a good money. And it's like anything else in life, but that's kind of where we're at with this art. And the fact that you did these YouTube channels to show technique, to save people the time and hassle, even though it's not as easy just to watch a video and then go do it. You know what I mean? You still gotta practice it and put it into action. And
a lot of people watch them and they're like, "Man, you make it look so easy, and I can't even do the seal or whatever." But that's just part of the process. I mean, it just takes time and practice. Like you say, people ask me all the time, "Oh, what's it take to be a master glass blower?" And it's a really simple answer. It's just practice. A
Yeah.
lot of practice, like an obsessive amount of
Yeah,
practice.
obsessive is correct. Yeah, dude, because I was, people always talk about the whole 10,000 hour rule, and I'm like, with our industry and our craft and a trade and art, whatever you want to call it, it's like 10,000 hours per technique. You know,
Yeah, I equate it more to like if you're playing a musical instrument and glass blowing is not really like a guitar, it's more like a violin,
yeah,
where it's the epitome of technique and the most difficult challenge. And it's a lot of things, 10,000 hours you can master it, but glass is going to take a lot more, and everyone's different. But I've seen a few special gifted people that have mastered it very fast, but in general it takes tens of thousands of hours.
yeah, I agree, man. I think that's one fun thing with our medium too is it exposes artists out there that didn't realize that they were an artist until they started melting glass. Like they can't even draw a stick figure, but you give them a torch and some glass to melt, and it's like the creations that they can make in like the first month is just mind-boggling. It's just like these little prodigies walking around, and especially to have the exposure again through your education. And now that a lot of smoke shops out there are offering classes, and there's other places and studios that are doing classes. Just the overall, I call all the open source now that we have to the technique. Because as you know, when we first started, either you had to pay a shit ton of money, or they would just look at you cross-eyed and tell you to go fuck yourself if you even wanted to walk into someone's studio to learn
Yeah.
something, much less see how they had it set up.
Yeah, there's so definitely a lot of places that offer pipe making classes now. And when I started my school in 2006, I was the first business to offer professional level pipe making classes and workshops with pipe makers. And a lot of people gave me a lot of negative feedback, saying, I was putting myself at risk because it was shortly after Pipe Dreams, and that pipe making wasn't something to be taken seriously. But I was the first person to say, well, a master pipe maker and a master glass blower, they both are masters, and they should both be teaching. And so I was offering classes with like Gianni Toso 1 month and then banjo the next. And now a lot of people have kind of taken that model, and now there's pipe making workshops offered all over the world. But when I started that, there was no other place that did that.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That's also why I want to bring you on, brother, because you're like a pioneer in our industry, and I've looked up to you in this process because now that I've always enjoyed teaching myself and also as an entrepreneur, and getting this podcast launched, which all stem from seeing the generations that learn from yourself, but also that were inspired from degenerate art. That all of a sudden you see these studio setups in their bedroom with a box fan in the window, and it's like I had to reach out to these kids somehow to be like, you guys got to change what you're doing. This isn't healthy or safe, which then inspired me to do this podcast. And here I am, your episode 128. So it's crazy,
Yep.
how things happen like that. And I'm finding even now more so that I love glass, and I love being an artist and doing what I do, but I also love the educational space, and to see people reach out back to me, or like you're saying, feedback that you get that are so grateful for putting something out there that they can take and use and benefit from what we're giving them. Not everybody takes it and uses it, but the ones that do seem to be grateful for it.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of people interested in learning, and there's a lot of good resources now. I mean, besides my YouTube channel, there's a lot of groups on Facebook and different people doing some other kind of videos on YouTube. And there's definitely a lot of information out there that makes it a lot easier for people to understand a technique and try to create it themselves, or make a variation of that technique that works for them.
Yeah, for sure. And to kind of go along with the whole YouTube thing, so when you got that started, what was the inspiration to start the YouTube channel?
Well, at the time, I mean, the school right now we don't offer any public classes or any group classes or any workshops anymore. But at the time, we were doing workshops, and we had a pipe making program that was several months long, and people would come and work for several months in small groups. And I wanted people for the first video, the how to make a clear spoon and a dabber, those first two videos, they came out because I wanted people to, one, know that there was a place to do that, because at the time there it was still pretty early on. I mean, I think Glasscraft had maybe started doing some pipe making classes, but pretty much it was just me. And then I wanted people to know, hey, you could come here and learn how to make pipes. And so then we put up those videos, and they got way more views than I thought. And also I wanted to put up a video because there was no very clear video shot well on YouTube on how to make a pipe. And so I was like, well, there's this guy on YouTube that had 400,000 views on his video, and it's just a hilarious video. And he was an inspiration to me because he's blowing glass without a shirt on, listening to the Chili Peppers, and like halfway through the video, the power cuts off, and he's like, fuck, keeps blowing glass, and like puts up the video. Like, and it's just like, I mean, I love him because he's an inspiration for my YouTube channel to have a good videos, but like it's hilarious, and it's just a massive fail. But he had 400,000 views on his video. And so I was like, man, I'm going to make an actual video with a good camera, because I'd been filming stuff prior. I'd already done live streaming for classes where Mickelson and Yashin were teaching at my school, and I've already had been doing stuff where I had made a beta of a glassblowing social network that was active for about a year. And so I had some experience with filming and internet and putting that up. And so I was like, I'm just going to put up a good video for a spoon. And it got, didn't get hundreds of thousands of views, but it got thousands pretty fast. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize that people were interested. So then I put up another one, and then pretty soon we had a bunch of videos, and one of my videos had 400,000 or 500,000 views, and we now we have 50,000 subscribers on YouTube, and videos get a couple thousand views in a day or two. So yeah, it was kind of like organic, and I didn't really realize that there was such a demand and an interest for some quality instructional videos on YouTube. So I continued with it because of largely the feedback that I was getting from the viewers, that thank you so much, this is helping me so much, and I can't wait for the next video. And then it's gotten me to teach all over the world and increased people's understanding of my work and my history, and in turn help them with their work and what's going to be their history. And a lot of people, now tens of thousands of people credit me and my videos for foundational skills that they're going to use for their whole career. And it's extremely rewarding for me to see that happen with other people. And for me and my own work, it's very symbiotic, and it works really well.
Yeah, it's fascinating, bro. And especially to see all the kind of like, if you look at like a tree, for the family tree of from you being in the center of it and what's branched off. And I mean, even now with the guys at Torch Talk, and over 6,000 members in this group, that's been like almost 3 years maybe now that they've had this thing. And those guys all worked with you through video chat and work, and then they wanted to continue it, so they started the freaking Torch Talk because it was something that they could continue doing. And what they're doing now is huge for the community. It's just so neat to see it, and as much information as that's out there, honestly, as you know, there's only a small handful of it that's actually good information, that's solid, good techniques, good habits, that kind of stuff. You see some of these guys out there that are doing videos with no glasses on, they're using like a MAP gas torch and some bullshit. It's like, it's a joke in a sense. I mean, it's almost a parody on what we're trying to do. And it teaches people, like, they see it maybe for the first time, being exposed to this, and they're like, oh, that's how you go do it. And then they do it, and then they teach somebody else that does it the same. You know what I'm saying? Like, it teaches, generations of bad habits. So
yeah, I wanted to put out the videos too, because there was nobody with the kind of experience that I had who was putting out a video. There's no like very qualified glassblower to share these techniques. And like you said, there was a lot of garage techniques and people who have learned entirely by themselves, and that's great, and they have something to teach. I mean, I still take classes with people that I really want to learn a trick or two from, and so I think that's great. But the motivation was I wanted to share the experience that I had. And I mean, like I say in my videos, there's tons of ways to do a particular thing, and this is just the way that I'm choosing to do it right now. But there's a lot of different paths to the same end.
Heck yeah. So have you always had the entrepreneurial spirit in a sense for yourself as wanting to own a business?
Yeah, absolutely. Even as a kid, I would trade my toys with my friend. I remember one time I traded like one action figure for like 10 dinosaurs from like a friend of mine. And like his parents called my parents and was like, you got to bring back those dinosaurs.
That's awesome.
Um, but yeah, as I got older and practiced more and more business, it became a much bigger part of my life. And I've definitely tried um, other things and tried different products. And I actually own another business. So yeah, I definitely am consider myself an entrepreneur, and I'm pushing forward. And if I see gaps in the market, I try to do it. And like for example, the pipe making school, nobody did it. The e-nail, I was developing an electronic device for oils way before there was an e-nail. We had it in the shop. It was called the Edison. It was a coil in quartz that was heated. And I mean, at the time, Dosa was an apprentice and Punty, and those guys were an apprentice at my studio. And we were we had this electronic device, and they were making swings. So um, it's always something that I'm developing and trying to do, and a lot of them didn't go through. Like I never put that Edison into production because it was in 2007 or 8, and it was a little bit early for the oil culture. Um, I worked and made quartz nails, domeless quartz nails, but it was a little bit early, so it's kind of about timing. But I always try to see where the gaps are and to see how I can fill them if I can.
Yeah, man, I've noticed. It's killer. So could kind of move on from there in terms of that. Like with the new product line you came out with a couple years back with your drop series. What was the inspiration for that? Was it more of like a function over form thing that then turned into form and function?
Well, at the time I had a few employees making my production, and um, we were developing different designs, and we had about 10 at the time, maybe 5 or 10 designs. And um, like I mentioned earlier, we like right now it's a super small crew. It's like a just me and Carlos, Los One Glass, and Opera Glass um, at the studio. And I like it much better because it takes a lot less management and my time, and so I can focus on my own work and traveling and teaching. So at the time, we had a bunch of people, 10 people or so, working at the studio, and we were making the production. But the droplet is the one that I kept in production. The other ones, I stopped production because um, I really was attracted to the form of the droplet. I mean, it's a classical form. I mean, it's basically an amphora or a veronese. It's a Grecian shape, um, and I wanted to really make a classical shape that kind of was different than other people, but highly functional. And the droplet never gets water in your mouth. It's super small. I mean, it fits in your pocket, and it also for me represented the oil culture because it's a drop. It's a drop of oil,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and so for me, I really wanted a piece that was something that I could reproduce, that was simple enough to reproduce a few of them, but complicated enough that it was difficult to reproduce. I mean, the droplet appears to be a very simple piece to make, but it's actually quite complicated. It's got a side seal with no blow tube that you have to figure out how to connect, and it's got a ring seal and an internal seal, but it's a very simple form. So somebody's going to pick it up, and even a glassblower would be like, "Oh, that's simple to make," but actually, it's a quite a challenging little shape to make. And so with the droplet, I kind of use it as a canvas. So I said, well, I'm known for this droplet shape, and everybody knows that this is the shape that's associated with my work, and I can use that as a blank canvas, and I can make a crushed opal one, or wigwags, or raticello, or marini, and still have the same form that's the droplet form that's associated with my work, and I can do all kinds of different color work and variation within the same form. So it's a good platform and a shape that's notable, that's different than anything else in the industry. I mean, it's kind of separate because of just the shape. I mean, it's not the classical shapes, pipe shapes that JP Toro kind of started, which a lot of the shapes are kind of based on the banger hangers and the square with the mouthpiece and the lip, the thicker lip. That kind of stuff was based on Toro's shaping, and it's based in the scientific realm, whereas the droplet is a little bit more pushed towards the classical shape and the smooth lines and the curvature. I mean, to get that curve perfect on the droplet, it's not easy.
No, not at all.
You have to blow that out and have like a really perfect bubble, and so it was attractive to me for a lot of those reasons.
Yeah, man, I like it a lot. When I first saw some of your teaser videos that came out, I was like, "Oh, this is amazing." Now let's see how many people are going to try and copy this thing.
But that's the thing. It's like some people have,
and it's not easy.
It's really clear when it's a copy because it's they think it's going to be simple, but it's a very difficult shape, and the proportions have to be right, and the mouthpiece has to be the right length. But I've seen a lot of people who've, I guess, got inspiration from that shape, but there's been nobody who's put it into production. There's been only a few people that I've seen try to sell them, but like it's a very clear knockoff because they're lumpy and they're they can't quite get the form right.
Yeah, I agree, man. Deceptively simple. It's one of those things that's fun. Because my line I do is these little owls that I make that I call the wise guys that go along, which actually what spawned the name for the podcast. And it's the same kind of thing. It's more of a peanut shape, but the bottom of the owl is that similar teardrop shape. And it's not like it took me probably 100 of them to really fine tune it and figure it out to get it down to where it wasn't creating a straw, or where you just suck water up through the constriction at the neck, and all that stuff. But now it's at a point where I can do it with my eyes closed, and it creates a nice little splash guard and the flow in the air. And I mean, like you're saying, you can make them small enough to fit in your fucking pocket. Like when the whole 10 mil started coming out and the pendant rig came out, and I was like, this is kind of silly. And then I made a couple that were like the size of pendants, and I was like, wow, this is super functional and portable and super cool. Like I was blown away by it. It made so much more sense, in terms of especially with the whole oil industry.
Yeah, and I would definitely encourage all the listeners and all the viewers from my YouTube channel to develop their own signature piece that speaks to them. Like I've been working with Opera Glass, and he's called Opera Glass because he has a degree in opera, and so we've been developing some musical notes and some different rigs that kind of go with the theme of music. And I think that people should look at within themselves and find out what in the world is attractive to them, and how to make their own piece, a signature style piece that's not a copy of somebody else's work that they gain inspiration from, but a copy of an inspiration from the world, and something that they see in the world that they say, oh well, this is an inspiration to me. Like I was inspired and am inspired by Venetian glass and classical shape, and so I was like, okay, how can I adapt this shape to make a piece? And some of my earlier works, like I was making some classical what I was calling vase tubes, and it was very similar. I mean, it had a very similar shape, but much more complicated components around it. But you can Google it and you'll see a couple of them. But I was making those in 2007, 8, and 9, and you have to just find out what's inspiration for you and make your own signature piece. And there's enough objects and concepts in the world for everyone to not copy somebody's work. And I see it a lot. I see a lot of people copying people's work directly, and it doesn't speak highly for one's creativity to do that.
Yeah, I agree completely. One of the past guests, he said you should imitate until you can innovate. The idea, which I completely agree. So, yeah, man. One more thing too, I wanted to ask you about. Being a father and a husband. Like, did you find that point in time when that came into your life that it really changed your perspective on your course and your career as a glass artist and what you wanted to do? Or did it just kind of like add more fuel to your fire?
Yeah, it was fuel to the fire. I met my wife when we were both very young. She was 19 and I was 25, and we got pregnant right away with our first son within a few months. And it was definitely, I mean, at the time we were struggling a lot financially. I mean, we couldn't pay rent. We were on food stamps and Medi-Cal, and I couldn't support myself barely, let alone two other people with glass. So it definitely was a huge challenge, and it took years to figure out how to do it. And I tried many different things, but never gave up. You know, I tried opening the school and offering workshops and pipe making classes and Groupon classes and products like the Edison, the e-nail that I made, or the quartz nails, or other businesses. And so it's definitely it's a challenge, and it was a challenge. But as I got older and my kids got older, it became easier. And now my oldest son is just turned 13 last week, and he and I have been doing a live stream called On the Torch Live on Sundays at 2, and so it's been a beautiful process, but it has been the most challenging process. I mean, even more than learning the technical aspects of glass, how to manage a family and the financially living in Berkeley, California, which is up on the top couple places, expensive places to live in the country, while being an artist. That was an even bigger challenge to try to figure out.
Yeah, using that dynamic is impossible. Yeah. So, yeah, man, God bless, brother. That's some serious perseverance, because I know myself, having 2 kids and being married and the whole 9 yards, like having the family support is the most important part of this process, because I'm sure if you didn't have that support, and I'm sure there were times where it wavered here and there and you weren't really sure what the hell's going on and, who's going to get food this week. And man, I remember those days. It fucking sucks.
Yeah, it's difficult, but I'm glad I went through those experiences, because now I am so appreciative that I'm able to live in Berkeley and have a nice car and go to Whole Foods for my grocery. Like, it's not something I take for granted.
Yeah.
Because I had so many years of a struggle. There was no point that Rita said, "Hey, get a regular job," and she put my passion for glass and my career at a very high priority, and kind of put her musical interests aside to support me. And now we've gotten to the point where what we've done at the studio is we've split the building in half, and she has built a music studio with an isolation booth and recording and band practice area on half for her to follow her passion now, and the other half is for me to work in glass. But it's taken years. I mean, we've been together 14 years, so it's taken years to kind of get to that point.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hell yeah, man. Well, I think this is a good spot to take a break and thank our sponsors, and then we'll come back and it'll be time for us to crash the kiln.
Sounds good.
This segment of the Wise Guy Radio Show is brought to you by Zen Glass Studios. Located in the heart of St. Petersburg, Florida, Zen Glass has a wide range of offerings to choose from. Their menu includes one-on-one or group classes in their hot shop or flameworking studio, create your own wine glass, and so much more. If you're a traveling artist, they even have a space to rent that you can temporarily call home. With over 50 years of combined experience, Zen Glass can help you fine-tune your techniques, whether you're a novice or advanced glass artist. For their calendar of events, including info about their Third Thursday studio jams, you can contact Zen at zenglass.com. That's zenglass.com. All right, we are back. So the Crash in the Kiln round consists of about 7 questions. And if you want to give me a 30 to 60-second answer, you can, or you can expound upon them as well, as most guests usually do. And the fact that you have this huge background of artists you've worked with, this might be difficult for you, but maybe not. But I always like to ask the first question is if there is any living glass artist that you had not yet worked with, who is it and why?
Well, I'm actually very open to working with a lot of people, and skill level is definitely attractive, but I think that it's really I can learn from everybody. I can learn one little trick from most people that I meet, no matter what skill level they are. If it's a way to think about something, or if it's a way to execute something. So I'm very open to collabing. I think what makes it attractive to me is somebody's signature style. If somebody's doing something that's unique, it doesn't really matter how long they've been blowing glass or how famous they are. If they do something that speaks to their individual personality, then I would love to collab with them, and I'm very open to receiving messages and requests for collab. Recently, I've been going to Murano and working with three brothers that have like about, I don't know, 600 or 800 years of uninterrupted lineage, and they're the Ballerine brothers, and there's three brothers, and one's a sculptor, one's a blower, and one's a constructor. And last week we made, I don't know, 5 or 10 classically influenced collabs, but I'm open to working with pretty much anybody.
Hell yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. Do you have any pictures at some point you could share of that stuff?
Yep. There's in Facebook there's a Revere Glass Gallery, it's called.
Okay.
And I put pictures and like sneak peeks up there first, and then of course on the Instagram and YouTube for the general public. When things get launched, there's a couple sneak peeks of the things that we've done. We're releasing a new video. We've released a sub series that kind of chronicles my travels and teaching and things like that, and that's called Beyond the Torch, because our other one, their main series, is called On the Torch. So we're going to be releasing a couple Beyond the Torches for the collabs in Italy, and we just released one for Burning Man and blowing glass there and sharing glassblowing at Burning Man. So that's a really good place to check it out. I mean, you can find it by either just typing in how to make a glass pipe in Google, or just Revere Glass on YouTube.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I'll have all these links in the show notes for everybody, for sure. So next question I'd like to ask is if you could describe the sound of glass cracking in one word, and it could be a visceral sound or emotional sound, word-wise. What is that word?
Tink.
Perfect. What are your top 5 favorite colors in glass?
Well, yeah, colors is I mean I really like a lot of colors, but it's been interesting to see since when I started blowing glass there was about 5 colors.
Yep.
And now there's hundreds, and there's a full spectrum of transparent, rainbow, and opaque colors. I really like the set of blue hues that Glass Alchemy has, because there's a huge spectrum, about 6 blues that vary in density and darkness. I also really like purples and transparent purples, and of course I like the new reactive colors, UV and CF reactive colors and glow colors and sparkle colors. I like the silver colors. I mean, I think that each color has a purpose, and each color can be used, and I wouldn't want to limit the palette anymore, but I think that some of the new UV colors are very exciting. It's something unique and culturally unique to the pipe making blowers.
Yeah, I agree, man. It's fun. It's especially like you're saying, when we started, it was like one green and it sucked. So now it's amazing to see what we have now at our hands. So, what is your worst injury in the studio?
Well, I've burned myself quite a few times, but I've cutting myself really bad hasn't happened. I've definitely got glass stuck in my foot. I mean, I used to go barefoot every day in my studio, and there's definitely some things I've read online about how I always was barefoot in the studio, so I've got glass stuck in my foot. But I mean, sometimes when I'm working, something will fall on my hand, or something like that, and some burns. But never anything permanent or anything like that. So I'm lucky, but I think that glass blowing is actually fairly safe compared to most mediums. Like if you want to compare the safety to jewelry, where they're using extremely toxic chemicals, or woodworking where you can cut off your finger, or oil painting where there's a lot of chemicals in the air. I think that glass blowing is probably one of the safest, lamp working, one of the safest art forms.
Heck yeah. Yeah, I try to tell my wife that all the time, and she still doesn't believe me. So, shit. So, do you have any glass blowing themed tattoos?
I have a pair of jacks tattooed on my right forearm.
Awesome. Hell yeah. And the last question I always like to ask is, if you were stranded on an island, any kind of island of your choice, that had a glass studio on it, and it supplied your gas, your kiln, and your torch. And I'm also going to throw in your glasses now, because people have, most guests forget to say glasses. But you had to make something on in the studio. What 5 items would you bring?
On an island, I have a studio, and I have to bring 5 items.
Yeah, you have your gases, your torch, your kiln, and your glasses.
But do I have glass?
Nope.
Wow. And I'm making something, so I would bring the glass, right?
Yep.
Probably like a shipping container full of glass and color.
Beautiful.
And then I would bring my my tools, but specifically the jacks, diamond shears, straight shears, and step down tweezers, which are basically the tools that I use for creating everything. I would definitely bring a nice chair, because that's important to be comfortable. I'd probably bring a truckload of CBD, of crystallized CBD. I think that's 4. I don't know, like probably some like organic food or something.
Hell yeah. There you go. Awesome. Yeah, it's always fun to ask. And I try to keep it as vague as possible just to see what comes up, because I've gotten all kind of fun answers. My favorite so far is Coyle said he'd bring a G5 and just fly the fuck out of there.
Yeah, that's something that he would say probably.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Yep.
So, all right, brother. Well, again, I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man. So, again, it's an honor to have you on the show and continuing this educational platform here with the podcast and your videos. And, it's fun to see how this growth of this community has gone. It's as we can all just become and continue to be pioneers and trailblazers and teach the right stuff. I think this community is going to continue to grow in a positive manner.
Absolutely. It's definitely in a growth phase, and it's going to grow before it shrinks, and it's exciting to be a part of, and I'm very thankful for all the support that I get for my work and the videos, and definitely excited to see where it goes and how it grows and changes with the legalization of cannabis on the horizon. I definitely equate it to being a goblet maker right before Prohibition ended.
Yeah. Well said. I agree completely. Yep. We're all gearing up and we're getting ready for it. I can't wait. So before we let you go, brother, if you want to give us any kind of a parting piece of advice, and then also where we can find you out there in the world of cyberspace.
Yeah, I would say that the advice is practice and pay attention. That's the best advice that I could give to anybody. And you can find my YouTube channel at youtube.com/Revere Glass. Instagram Revere Glass for lifestyle, and Dustin Revere for Glass Gallery. On Facebook, you can find the Revere Glass Gallery group, which is a group for sharing work and technique. And of course, my website, which is going to basically talk about the classes that we offer and the places that I'm traveling and teaching.
Awesome. Hell yeah, man. Well, again, it was an honor to have you on here, and thank you for tuning into this episode. Hope you enjoyed my chat here with Dustin and all his information and insights, and we'll see you next time on the Wise Guy Radio Show. Take it easy. This episode of the Wise Guy Radio Show is brought to you by The Flow magazine. Since its inception, the focus of The Flow has been to provide a bond among members of the lampworking community. In every issue, you can enjoy great content with the hottest artists and cutting-edge techniques using the latest industry products. These features, along with a continuation of our Women in Glass edition, Glasscraft Emerging Artist Awards, inspiring gallery showcases, dynamic general interest articles, as well as health and safety information, make The Flow the leading international lampworking journal. For more information or to subscribe to The Flow, go to theflowmagazine.com. That's The Flow Magazine. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Wise Guy Radio Show. If you have any questions, comments, or remarks, please leave them in the show notes page area where it says comments. We'll see you soon. Have a wise night.
You're listening to the Wise Guy